Hey everyone, this is Chef, and this week we got a brief competitive update stream from Roy, Cal, and Taylor, discussing some upcoming changes to core world versus world systems like scoring, siege, and tactivators. The stream topic was announced previously, buried deep within the Spring and Summer Guild Wars 2 Studio update on May 14th, and these changes, with the exception of scoring, will go live on July 16th. The scoring changes themselves will go live that Friday, July 19th, since they change fundamental parts of the world versus world scoring system and are unable to be implemented midweek. In this video, we're going to cover the changes in this stream, how they'll change world versus world, and what they mean for the game mode going forward. These sections will be timestamped, so if you want to hear about specific changes, you can navigate to that section of the video. And if you like these patch review videos, why not subscribe and like the video to let me know that I should keep doing them. Starting with scoring changes, let's cover some basic terminology first. Scoring doesn't really matter in the current iteration of World vs. World, so some people may not actually know what determines score and tier movement. World vs. World matches take place over 1 week, with each week divided into 84 2-hour blocks called skirmishes. The winner of a skirmish gets 5 points, second place gets 4 points, and third place gets 3 points. A skirmish winner is determined by the amount of war score that team has accumulated in that 2-hour period, and war score comes from a number of different sources. Objectives that your team holds provide war score every 5 minutes, while capturing objectives generates war score for attackers, as does defeating enemy players. This current scoring system has issues with the way that player activity contributes to score, and where scoring sources come from based on what time zone they happen in. This is going to take a little bit of math to explain, but it's not particularly complicated. In the current iteration of World vs. World, that is, before this patch goes live, off-hours coverage contributes as much victory points to the overall score, despite being far less active in terms of player activity. Big tiered-up objectives, like Keeps and Stone Mist Castle, continue to tick, generating the same amount of war score every 5 minutes, regardless of who's online and actually playing. What this means is that per player active in a given time zone, these off-hours make individual players more valuable to their contributions to the overall score. This leads to servers with good time zone coverage having inflated scores as a result. Servers like JQ or SOS, and historically, the importance of off-hours coverage has led to servers purchasing guilds or holding off-hours raids for the sake of generating war score. And these patterns of play aren't particularly healthy. They burn players out, and they fracture communities. Because of this outsized influence of off-hours groups and time zone coverage, skirmishes will now be weighted based on the typical activity for each region per skirmish, split between NA and EU. These are the breakdowns of how those scores will work. Using NA Pacific time as an example, if your team wins the 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. skirmish, you'll receive 33 victory points. But if your team wins the 3 a.m. to 5 a.m. skirmish, you'll only receive 13 victory points. This change weights activity during the periods of time when more players are active in playing the game, and as a result, which teams belong in which tiers will more accurately represent overall activity level across all time zones, rather than how much time zone coverage those servers have for high-value off-hours skirmishes only. Now, I do recognize my bias here, as somebody who plays almost exclusively in NA Prime, so if you're an off-hours group, whether it's in EU or NA, let me know how you feel about these changes in the comments. Did you like the responsibility of controlling what matchup a team got to go to? Or are you looking forward to victory point totals having a more fair distribution based on overall activity across every time zone? But that's not all for score updates, as the amount of points received for capturing objectives is also changing, and scales based on the tier of the structure captured. I've put the previous values on the left, and you can see the new values on the right. This is a substantial buff for groups that are capturing enemy structures, and an additional incentive for capturing tiered structures, giving the active attack and defensive structures and objectives in World vs. World much greater importance in determining overall score. Additionally, defeating enemy players will generate more war score as well, going from 2 to 3. This change in particular will enable fight groups, or GVG groups, or whatever you'd like to call them, to make larger contributions to their server's overall score, rather than having a score be primarily determined by points per tick, or PPT. One of the issues with the current system is that war score heavily favors structure defense, more than any other source of war score, so servers and teams that spend a lot of time defending tiered objectives float to the top of the tier system. This leads competitive fight-oriented groups to try and tank out of higher tiers to find other groups to fight, and so this leads to fight groups settling in lower tier teams, and defensive PPT groups settling in higher tiers. Coupled with the changes to skirmish score weighting, the result of these changes should be that more active servers, both for PPT and PPK, tend to rise in tiers overall, while less active servers tend to fall in tiers, reducing the need for groups to feel like they have to tank to get favorable matchups. So you may be thinking to yourself, who cares? Why are scoring changes such a big deal? Well, one of the major complaints that players have had about World vs. World for years now is that winning doesn't matter, and there's no incentives for winning. And this patch isn't going to change that immediately. However, both scoring changes and the implementation of the restructuring system were necessary to fix the issues with competitive rewards that ArenaNet identified during seasons. If you aren't familiar with that period of the game, servers would purchase guilds for coverage, mass transfer to individual servers to stack matchups, run 12 and 24-hour raids to keep score up, double team servers performing well, and overall, that period of the game led to significant burnout and community disruption from frequent guild movement, bandwagoning, match fixing, and unhealthy amounts of playtime overall. With the ability to stack servers reduced thanks to the restructuring system, and the influence of coverage guilds, PPT, and off-hours raids limited with these proposed changes to the scoring system, at least I think it's fairly obvious at this point that ArenaNet is building the necessary structures for the introduction of competitive rewards for winning World vs. World matchups in a way that doesn't incentivize unhealthy play, possibly as soon as the end of this year. And if that was all that was in the stream, that would still be pretty neat. But it's not. There are some changes to other systems in World vs. World as well. If you're unfamiliar with objective contesting, this is the system that controls whether an objective has white swords, whether there's an active defense event at an objective, and whether an objective waypoint can be used or not. Previously, attacking or being attacked by any guard around an objective was enough to contest that objective, making it easy to tap an objective, sometimes even accidentally disable waypoint use and make white swords. This is being changed so that there's now only two conditions that contest an objective. Number 1, the Lord is put into combat, and number 2, a gate or a wall is damaged to 98% or less. Continued damage to a gate or wall will recontest an objective, but if a structure is damaged to 98% and then attackers leave or are defeated, an objective will uncontest after that 30-second period. This means that it's harder to contest an objective to prevent players from taking a waypoint, and easier for defenders to respond to an objective that's coming under attack. It also means that white swords are more significant. They're now more indicative of a pending attack rather than a single player running past an objective. The function of the emergency waypoint activator is also changing when slotted to keeps and castles. Currently, emergency waypoint spawns one waypoint that can be used even if an objective is contested, and this waypoint appears directly above the tactivators, making it easy for an attacking group to camp the waypoint and farm responding defenders. This is being changed in the patch so that emergency waypoint will spawn 3 different waypoints, and at least from the screenshot, it looks like one of them is the normal waypoint location at the tactivators, one of them will be along the inner wall of the objective, and one of them will be along the outer wall of the objective, giving defending groups a choice about where they want to muster a defense when emergency waypoint is pulled. I've seen people suggest that it may be confusing to know which waypoint to take, and we'll have to figure out the spawn locations for each one, but at least for now, my thoughts for calling them left, middle, and right emergency waypoint should be a pretty good solution overall. Finally, a handful of changes are being made to Siege. Guild Siege Golems are becoming more expensive, while arrow carts and trebuchets are becoming less expensive, and the cost of Guild Siege for arrow carts and trebuchets will be modified to match these new costs. It will also no longer be possible to effect Siege with Alacrity, and it will also no longer be possible to effect Siege Golems with any boons, except for Swiftness. Flame Rams are having their health cut in half, but only when they're not manned. An operated Flame Ram will have Ironhide applied to it automatically, which is a 50% damage reduction, and this cancels out the lost health. These changes are a small nerf to Golem rushes, which were and probably will continue to be the absolute fastest way to break into an objective, and they also make it easier for defenders to clean up siege left over after a failed attack. Meanwhile, the cost reduction on trebuchets makes it look like they'll be the preferred option for keeping an objective contested, using long-range catapults from extra objectives or sneaky terrain spots to keep an objective permanently tapped until that siege is destroyed. For rewards, there's also a new set of skins coming out with this patch, the Corrupted Heroes weapon set, which are a reskin of the normal bronze and gold heroes weapons, turning them silver with a purple aura. Exotic versions of these skins drop in Mist-hardened lockboxes, so expect that price to rise very slightly leading up to the patch, while Ascended versions are upgraded in the Mystic Forge, from the rare base form hero weapon and an assortment of Grandmaster Mark shards and other world versus world currencies. This is actually a very cheap Ascended weapon recipe, and it's nice to have more sources of Ascended gear available in the game mode. So if you're currently short on Ascended weapons, this patch will make it quite a bit easier to get those for yourself. But that does it for the content of the competitive balance stream that we got. I think that the World vs. World development team continues to do a good job of changing the structural elements of World vs. World in a positive way, and while the game mode is still far from perfect, with some unpopular meta professions, queue bugs, and skill lag, I think that it continues to move in a good direction, and I'm excited to see what the eventual rewards payoff is for this list of changes that we've seen so far. But I also know there's a lot of things in World vs. World that have changed lately, so if your opinion is different from mine, or you're struggling to just keep up with everything that's different now, I'd love to hear about that in a comment so that we can talk about it some more, maybe in a future video. And of course, if you liked this video, please do subscribe to the channel and give it a thumbs up so that you can let me know. My summer schedule has been really busy, but it's been great to sit down in the editing room and put something together for all of you. We'll be moving back to a weekly release schedule at the start of August, and I'm excited to get back to some more build videos and general conversations about the game mode, but until that time, I've been Chef, and enjoy the rest of your day.